Tonight, political bombshell. Ottawa's foreign election interference investigator steps down. David Johnston resigns amid mounting pressure.
This process was flawed from the very beginning.
And the new push for a public inquiry.
I don't think that there's really any in-between option here.
New details about Donald Trump's biggest legal threat.
We have one set of laws in this country, and they apply to everyone.
The 37 criminal charges facing the former U.S. president. Plus donning a cap and gown at just 12 years old.
I'm really excited and proud of myself.
The child prodigy and now university graduate making history.
CTV National News with Omar Sachedina. Reporting tonight, John Venavali Rao.
Good evening, everyone, and a busy Friday night with late word today that David Johnston has quit his post as special rapporteur looking into alleged election meddling by China. The former Governor General sending this resignation letter to the Prime Minister. It all comes after weeks of pressure from opposition parties calling on him to step down. With more on the surprising development, here's CTV's Kevin Gallagher.
Bowing to weeks of growing pressure for him to resign, David Johnston won't lead the public hearings into Chinese interference he recommended, informing the Prime Minister tonight in a letter. My objective was to help build trust in our democratic institutions. I have concluded that given the highly partisan atmosphere around my appointment and work, my leadership has had the opposite effect.
Look, this has been months of conservatives and other opposition parties saying that there needed to be a public inquiry, and this process was flawed from the very beginning.
In March, the Prime Minister appointed Johnston to lead an investigation into allegations China interfered in the past 2 elections. Media reports citing leaked intelligence created a crisis for Justin Trudeau, who viewed the former Governor General appointed by Stephen Harper as someone other parties would accept. The opposite happened.
Will we put an end to the act and fire this rapporteur and call a public inquiry?
Opposition parties pounced on Johnston's ties to the Prime Minister's family, including his time on the board of the Trudeau Foundation.
Now the appearance of bias is so strong that the special rapporteur can no longer continue to do his work.
Defending his reputation, Johnston insisted there was no conflict of interest.
These allegations are, put simply, false, and the decision to repeat them does not make them true.
The Privy Council office says we thank him for his report of May 23rd and for his enduring commitment to Canada and Canadians. In that report, Johnston warned foreign interference is a pervasive threat to Canada's democracy, criticizing intelligence agencies for poor communication with the government. Since his report, 3 MPs have been told by CSIS that they were targeted by Beijing, including Conservative Michael Chong, whose family was also of interest to China.
How can you and the government restore trust and confidence?
Testifying at committee earlier this week, critics grilled him over perceived contradictions in his report's conclusions.
Are you saying that you didn't have all of the material evidence?
When we drafted our report, we had the intelligence then available.
And just last week, the majority of opposition MPs voted for him to step down.
I worry that a lot of these political issues have overshadowed the necessary changes that need to be made.
Tonight, the Conservative and NDP leaders renewed calls for a public inquiry. Something Johnston recommended against. Tonight, he encouraged the Prime Minister to consult with opposition parties to find someone with national security experience to replace him. John?
Okay, Kevin Gallagher, thank you. Now to the other big political story, this one stateside, with Donald Trump becoming the first former president in history to face federal criminal charges. New photos show boxes of classified documents he kept in a ballroom, even a bathroom at his Mar-a-Lago home. Documents he allegedly showed to others. With more, here's CTV's Joy Malvin.
Donald Trump faces multiple investigations, but this by far is the biggest legal threat to the former president. This damning indictment includes 37 felony charges against Trump for willfully keeping hundreds of classified defense documents and obstructing government attempts to get them back.
Today, an indictment was unsealed, charging Donald J. Trump with felony violations of our national security laws.
Trump is accused of leaving the White House with classified information, storing and hiding what he called "my boxes" containing national secrets about U.S. nuclear programs, attack plans, and documents marked top secret for the Five Eyes Intelligence Alliance, which includes Canada.
Our laws that protect national defense information are critical to the safety and security of the United States, and they must be enforced. Violations of those laws put our country at risk.
Walt Nauta, a close Trump aide charged as a co-conspirator, accused of moving boxes around Mar-a-Lago at Trump's direction. Photos show them stored in a bathroom, a public ballroom, and spilling out of a box. At least twice in 2021, Trump allegedly shared classified information, including an attack plan and a classified map related to a military operation. At one point, Trump reportedly told his lawyers to ignore a subpoena and tell prosecutors, "Wouldn't it be better if we just told them we don't have anything here?" Out on the golf course with a Florida congressman, Trump has a tight grip on the Republican base. His rivals for the presidency defending him for now.
That in America, everyone is entitled to be presumed innocent until they're proven guilty.
This obviously will be an issue during the campaign, and the country doesn't need this distraction as well.
Twice impeached, twice indicted, Trump is fundraising off his legal trouble, even as two of his lead lawyers have resigned. He's expected in a Miami court next Tuesday before a judge that Trump himself appointed. John?
And Trump expected to enter a formal plea at that time. Thank you, Joy. Back here at home, parts of the fire-ravaged West are getting some much-needed rain tonight, but there are still more than 150 fires burning in BC and Alberta, where the latest evacuation order has been issued for the community of Edson. Here's CTV's BC Bureau Chief, Melanie Nagy.
As choking black smoke fills the sky, a massive wall of flames consumes the landscape near the BC town of Tumbler Ridge.
In all honesty, it's quite a serious situation.
Forest Tower is part of the team tracking the volatile fire that erupted Tuesday after lightning strikes in the area.
We are still seeing winds pushing this fire into a western direction, almost dead west.
That path is extremely dangerous, so threatening roughly 2,400 people were forced from their homes.
It was quite scary.
Esmeralda Pretorius, who is 30 weeks pregnant, took these photos as she fled Tumbler Ridge yesterday.
The queuing to get out of the town was something out of a movie.
These are our two vehicles here, packed up with as much as we could fit in them.
Brandon Broderick and his family also had to flee after fire crept close to his home.
Seeing the big, huge plume of smoke growing behind the house was pretty surreal.
Wildfires are burning right across the province, with hot, dry weather fueling flames. On Vancouver Island, an uncontrolled fire has closed a major highway. The rough logging road, designated as a detour, was also shut today. The problem, several accidents, including an overturned truck. Like BC, wildfires continue to burn in Alberta. At least 70 are active in the province. One fire has been burning uncomfortably close to Fort Chippewa. The entire community is under evacuation order.
It's very heavy. It's very heavy.
Mary Martin hasn't seen her home in over a week. She fears with the fire season so bad, so early, things will only get worse.
It's kind of like almost like a harsh reality of what we're dealing with climate change.
Here in BC, officials say the total area burnt so far this year already exceeds that burnt in 16 of the last 20 wildfire seasons. Melanie Nagy, CTV News, Vancouver.
And in the east, wildfires continue to rage through the forests of Quebec, with the province adding more resources to the fight.
We have around 800 firefighters on the ground right now. We're supposed to receive and having more firefighters from the United States, Portugal, and Spain.
Around 125 fires are burning across Quebec, scorching an area 14 times the size of Montreal. More than 13,000 Quebecers have been displaced so far.
I can smell something, but not bad.
But in Nova Scotia, more evacuation orders were lifted today, allowing residents to return home to survey the damage. Some cracks may be appearing in the labor market after a long stretch of job gains in this country. 17,000 jobs were lost in May, and for the first time in 9 months, the unemployment rate was up to 5.2%. Much of it driven by a drop in youth employment, and the numbers come just days after the Bank of Canada further raised interest rates in an effort to cool the economy and bring down inflation. And it appears there may be no immediate impact on jobs as a big name in the discount travel space shuts down. WestJet says its low-cost carrier Swoop will wind down operations by late October, after which its employees will be folded into its mainline operations. The decision comes after a pay hike deal with the airline last month that put Swoop and WestJet pilots on the same footing. Late word is coming in from Colombia tonight of an incredible survival story. 4 young children lost deep in the Amazon jungle 40 days ago have been found alive. They're the only survivors of a deadly plane crash that killed their mother and 2 other adults. The children are now receiving medical attention. The Colombian president called the rescue a joy for the whole country. Battle tanks from Canada have now been deployed in southern Ukraine as part of the country's counteroffensive against Russia's invasion. This as floodwaters continue to recede following Tuesday's dam collapse. But now those in the disaster zone are facing a new danger: floating landmines. CTV's chief international correspondent Paul Workman reports from Kyiv tonight.
What to take in the scramble to leave their homes after waiting 3 days to be rescued. For this woman, it was her bird cage. Saved from the surrounding floodwater, many of the sick and elderly helpless to leave on their own, and now homeless too. Recounting how she and her husband woke up horrified as water in the house rose up to her waist. Downstream, many kilometers away, debris from the flooding is now washing up on the shores of the Black Sea. Clumps of inland turf, a cushion from a couch, and what can't readily be seen, floating landmines. Thousands were sown on both sides of the Dnipro River, out there still, either stuck in the mud or flushed into the river itself.
So mines can float for kilometers downstream, particularly plastic-bodied mines can float longer.
There's growing information that the Kakhovka Dam was deliberately blown up. Norway says it has seismic data showing exactly that.
An explosion at 2:54 local Ukrainian time, the 6th of June. And we are confident on the timing of the explosion, and we're confident that it is an explosion.
The rescue effort is not limited to humans. Pets, too, are being pulled out of the water into the caring arms of volunteers. A frightened cat plucked from a ledge. A dog that couldn't swim away. And 90-year-old Valentina Timofeevna, tearful at the thought of what she left behind. Don't cry, she's told. Don't be sad. The water will go away and your pets will be rescued. There's a report tonight that a U.S. spy satellite also detected an explosion inside the dam site. More news then of how it was destroyed, but no hard evidence yet of exactly who did it, John.
Great to see those pets rescued. Paul Workman in Kyiv tonight. Thank you. Coming up after the break.
This was a baseball decision to make our team better.
The Blue Jays pitcher who's now been dropped by the team ahead of its Pride weekend. Plus, bidding farewell to the queen of Canada's daytime television. A week-long search that prompted an Amber Alert for a missing 14-year-old girl in Newfoundland has ended. Police found the teen overnight in a remote cabin and have charged 3 seniors with abduction. CTV's Creason Adjkte has the story.
For nearly a week, a 14-year-old Indigenous girl was missing from St. John's. Today, 3 seniors were arrested, accused of her abduction in what police are calling a traumatic experience for the teen.
At this time, I wouldn't be able to confirm their relationship, but all parties were known to one another.
A 72-year-old male from New Brunswick, a 63-year-old female, and 69-year-old male, both from Newfoundland, have all been charged with abducting a person under 16 years old, conspiracy to commit an abduction, and the 72-year-old's additional charge of luring a child. They made their first court appearance this afternoon. Investigators allege the 72-year-old man entered into the province through a ferry terminal and planned to take the girl back to New Brunswick. An Amber Alert was issued on Thursday, and the man was arrested later that night. The girl was located with the other male and female at a cabin along the Bay d'Espoir Highway early this morning.
As to whether there's going to be any further investigation, I wouldn't want to further elaborate.
This cybersecurity expert says child luring in Canada has spiked significantly, with more children having access to a cell phone.
It's an epidemic. Nationally, cybertip.ca reports a massive increase from 2018 to 2022, almost 815% increase.
When asked why it took almost a week to issue an Amber Alert for the missing girl, police said the situation changed when they found out the 72-year-old man entered the province. Kristanachkate, CTV News, Halifax.
A pair of groups clashed near several schools in Ottawa today as supporters of trans rights tried to counter an activist protesting the teaching of what he calls gender ideology. Hundreds came out. Many said they were there to drown out hate and take a stand against the activist, who also believes trans kids should not be given puberty blockers. He was joined by supporters, and police tried to separate the groups. 5 people were arrested. And a Toronto Blue Jays pitcher who faced criticism for sharing an anti-LGBTQ2S+ video is no longer on the team's roster. The move to cut Anthony Bass from the ball club comes more than a week after Bass shared a post calling for a boycott of Target and Bud Light. He apologized, but yesterday stood by his decision, claiming it wasn't hateful.
The video itself, obviously I took it down. I just felt like it was too much of a distraction, right? But I stand by my personal beliefs.
Bass was supposed to catch the ceremonial first pitch at a Pride Night event this evening. The team now has 7 days to trade him or place him on waivers. Still ahead, the big thaw, why Canadian researchers are now more worried than ever about the ice in the Arctic. There is new urgency tonight when it comes to the battle against climate change. This after a new study found the Arctic Ocean may become free of summer ice far earlier than previously thought. Here's CTV's Adrian Gobriel.
What was once potentially avoidable is now inevitable.
The world just was not listening enough.
Any hope of saving summer sea ice from disappearing in the Arctic is now lost, according to an international group of climate scientists.
And we find an ice-free Arctic even under the lowest emission scenario, which has emissions going to zero.
Published this month in the journal Nature, the new findings project that even if greenhouse gases are reduced drastically, summer sea ice will still cease to exist by the 2050s. If low emissions targets aren't met, summer sea ice could vanish in the next decade. Nathan Gillett, a scientist with Environment and Climate Change Canada, co-authored the study.
Canada is warming at approximately twice the rate of the global average. One of the drivers for that is melting of ice and snow.
The snow and ice that blanket the Arctic as well as Antarctica reflect the sun's rays. It's a fine balance as other regions around the globe absorb heat. When ice disappears, less heat is reflected, which could create a cascading climate collapse here in Canada and beyond, according to analysts.
We're going to see more of that extreme weather, these extreme heats. We're going to see more of this flooding, more of this drought. That will also impact our ability to grow food. It will impact our ability to work.
It's absolutely very much worth reducing our emissions, getting to net zero as quickly as possible so that we can limit those impacts.
The consensus from scientists is nearly unanimous. Emissions caused by humans are at the core of the Arctic ice melt. Along with a more ambitious plan to reduce emissions, scientists say government and communities need to begin planning for our new shared reality, from building climate-resilient food systems to more resistant infrastructure to withstand what is to come. Adrian Gobriel, CTV News, Port Perry, Ontario.
And while on the subject of resiliency, a Florida diver and medical researcher has set a new record for living underwater. Dr. Joseph Deturi surfaced from the water in Key Largo today after spending 100 days below in an undersea lodge that beat the previous mark of 73 days set 9 years ago.
It was never about the record. It was about drawing a line in the sand and moving that needle, extending human tolerance for the underwater world.
Deturi was monitored for his body's response to long-term exposure to extreme pressure, and the information may be used for future deep-sea missions. And Canada's queen of daytime television, Marilyn Dennis, has called it a wrap, bidding farewell after 13 seasons on CTV.
Thank you for watching and supporting me, not only for these past 13 seasons, but for the past 34 years doing daytime television. Again, it's been a privilege.
There was no shortage of tears, giveaways, and surprise special guests on the final episode of The Marilyn Dennis Show. The 64-year-old announced it was coming to an end in April. She plans to spend more time with her family, but she's not done. Dennis will continue to co-host her weekday morning radio show and podcast. After the break, the tween about to make history.
I'm really excited and proud of myself for making it to this point.
Canada's wonderkind, who did more than skip a few grades. Anthea Dennis isn't even a teenager yet, but tomorrow she'll become Canada's youngest ever university graduate. Here's CTV's Judy Trin.
Among this year's University of Ottawa graduates is a child prodigy. At just 12 years old, Anthea Dennis is graduating with an honors bachelor's degree in biomedical science.
I'm really excited and proud of myself for making it to this point, and I'm really excited for what the future will bring.
Dennis is the youngest ever Canadian university graduate. Her mom, Joanna, saw her genius early. Her daughter was reading at 2 years old. At age 3, she scored 147 on an IQ test. The average score is 100.
I had a friend who works in early childhood education, and she said, no, that kid's Mensa.
Corrine Adam wants to have eight electrons.
At 6 years old, Dennis was schooling adults on chemistry. 2 years later, she took her first university course.
I hope that one day in the future I'll be able to get to a spot where I can fully be recognized just on my merit and not have age affect me.
Outside school, Dennis loves playing the violin and writing short stories. Her mother often put her in academic and extracurricular classes with kids in a range of ages, a strategy that helped Dennis adjust to interacting with much older students at university.
You know, there's like summer boredom, and then there's boredom where it's like a longing to learn. And I never want you to be in that place.
After she tosses her cap, Dennis will attend postgraduate school. So far, she's been accepted into 7 bioscience programs in Canada and the U.S. It's another chance to shoot for the stars. Judy Trin, CTV News, Ottawa.
Well, that's it for us tonight. I'm John Benavelli-Rao for Omar Sachedina and all the rest of us at CTV National News. Thank you for watching. Have a good night, and we'll see you again tomorrow.